I have a suspicion we're not going to see the rout that we are hoping for of the Democrats. I don't know, if you agree with me, but we have an expert on right now, Scott Rasmussen. Scott, welcome to the Savage Nation. Scott, the Delaware situation, do you think that she can win, Miss O'Donnell?
Christine O'Donnell is clearly behind. We have her down 11 in the latest polling. She's getting only 71% of the Republican vote. Some of the issues that she is facing have to do with the beating she's taken from some Republicans as well as Democrats in the media. But the bigger story is Delaware is a Democratic-leaning state. It is very difficult for any Republican to win there. So it's certainly, you shouldn't say she can't win, but it's an uphill fight.
Okay. You do polling all the time, and I know you've been dead accurate, really accurate. And the predictions for November, what do you think the losses will actually be, if any, on the Democrat side? Are they going to be this landslide towards the old Republican Party again, or what?
If you're talking about the United States Senate, much of the talk, I think, has been overheated. I'd expect the Republicans to pick up 6 or 7 seats in the Senate, but not to get control, which is, a good November, but it's not the landslides we're talking about. In the House, it looks like the Republicans will gain control, barring some major unforeseen event. Some people are talking, really high numbers and routes. Right now, I don't see that happening. Still a month and a half to go. Things could shift a little in either direction.
What about the local race here in California between Boxer and Fiorina? Who's going to win?
Almost all of the polling, shows Barbara Boxer with a narrow lead below 50%. What that tells me is she is still the favorite. It is still California. President Obama does fairly well in California. There's a Republican governor, Arnold Schwarzenegger, whose ratings are horrible. But Boxer is in a competitive enough race that if things slip, if she makes a mistake, if the next round of economic reports are out, she could be upset. If Barbara Boxer loses, it will have been a very long night for the Democrats.
Okay, last question on prognostication. What about the California governor's race? Meg Whitman spent $100 million of her own money, $120 million against Jerry Brown. Who's going to win that one?
Meg Whitman is up a little bit, which is one of the more stunning results that I've seen, and part of it's because of what you just said. She spent a lot of money. I don't understand spending that much money for a job that pays so little, but that's what she's trying to do.
That's my old joke. Who would spend that kind of money to make so little? But okay, we know what that's all about.
Yeah, the other thing I think that's really helping is Jerry Brown is, the caricature of a career politician. He was governor of the state literally half his lifetime ago. He has been running for and in office virtually his entire adult life. And in the year 2010, that's not a good thing to be. But, you're asking me all these prognostications. One of the things that I think people have kind of overlooked is the elections are one part of the process. It's what happens after the election that matters. And if Republicans do win control of the House and don't show that they've heard the voter anger out there, the Tea Party movement and others will turn on them very quickly.
Well, that brings us to the Tea Party movement. How viable? We know that it is the voice of the people. It is the true grassroots movement that the liberals dream about every night, that they have to manufacture. This is the real McCoy. But how effective are they in reality?
Very. The only reason we're having a debate in Congress over extending the Bush tax cuts is because of the Tea Party movement. This is a group that didn't exist in any form until a year and a half ago, and there are going to be several Tea Party candidates entering the United States Senate next year. It's rattling the Republican Party, and ultimately it's going to remake both political parties. The reason is this is an authentic grassroots movement. Doug Schoen and I have put this together in our new book, Mad as Hell, and we have shown that people are looking at this in a different way. They see there's a political class on one side, mainstream Americans on the other, and two things that animate the Tea Party movement. One, fiscal policy concerns. People want the government to spend less, tax less, and have smaller deficits. And the second, a core belief, is that the Tea Party movement doesn't think anybody in Washington cares about what mainstream Americans think, and they want the politicians to listen. Both of these issues are driven by the Tea Party, but the attitudes are shared by a majority of Americans.
All right, so let me ask you this, Scott. You know, I believe the economy is the number one issue that will define this election. In fact, you know, the title of my book, Trickle Up Poverty, is focused on that. But do we then assume that the people have forgotten all of the social issues that were once so profoundly important in this country?
You know, when you talk about how they've forgotten the social issues, the answer is no. At different times, different issues are important. In the immediate aftermath of 9/11, for several election cycles, national security issues were the most important, and those were the things that define the election process. Right now, the economy is the biggest issue, and it is this gap between the views in Washington and the views of the mainstream that is creating the tension. Most American voters believe one of the ways you help the economy is to cut spending and cut taxes and cut deficits. Most politicians want to go the other way. If it's a different year, a different issue may arise.
We're speaking with Scott Rasmussen, and Scott, you're about the best in the business. I have to go back to the social issues, and when I say social, I mean that's a pretty broad category. What about issues such as immigration? Doesn't that register on the horizon at all?
Immigration is a huge issue in Arizona. It is the single biggest reason that Governor Jan Brewer is cruising for re-election. She was struggling in the Republican primary earlier this year. Immigration plays a role in other states where people see it as connected to the economy. Immigration is an issue that again plays off of this gap, that there is a difference between the mainstream and the political elites. So yes, it has an impact, but it's not the direct impact that the economy has.
What about issues such as the visual? I'm looking for the right words. Obama's kowtowing to world leaders, the loss of America's prestige under Obama, the dancing with dictators, so to speak. Does that matter to voters?
Right now, anything to do with foreign policy is way down on the list. Now,
amazing.
What does connect, and again, this is, I'll give an example. I'll pick a president you're probably not too keen on, but Franklin Roosevelt, during the Great Depression, had all kinds of economic policies that free market advocates just hate and can't understand.
I understand.
Okay.
Right.
But Franklin Roosevelt also understood that the American people needed assurance during that time. He was very good at using the fireside chats, the then new technology of radio, to reach out to people, to connect. Yes. And that's how he became a very popular fixture throughout the New Deal era. What is missing today, the common theme that is going through the nation today, is that our government does not have the consent of the governed. Only 21% of Americans think that it does. That means it doesn't have the legitimacy, the moral authority to deal with these problems because of the gap that exists. And the Tea Party movement is saying, hey, we need to get the government to listen to the people again. It's like sometimes you have to yell at a child and say, stop, don't run into traffic. You need to listen to me, listen to an adult, and we'll explain it to you. That's what Americans are saying. And so when you ask about specific issues, whenever they fit into that theme of saying, look, if the politicians had been following the American people for the last several decades, we wouldn't be in these problems today. Well, that can fit into the overall theme that the Tea Party is trying to address in a variety of ways, but the top expression of those issues today is all about the economy.
But when you say President Obama, you say Nancy Pelosi, you say Harry Reid, the names themselves almost become verbs. Every one of those names, Obama, Pelosi, and Reid, to me, project outrageous egotism, outrageous arrogance, and in fact, outrageous anti-Americanism in the sense that they jammed their agenda down America's throat and boasted about it. Now, aren't those facts going to play a role in the election in November?
Absolutely. In fact, I'll take it back a step further. I believe the Tea Party movement, and this is, again, what we wrote about in our book, the Tea Party movement was a legitimate grassroots effort that was building under the surface for decades. It didn't just start this last year. People have been worrying about this for a long time.
Absolutely.
The single moment that really began to spark things was the passage of the bailouts of the financial institutions, the Wall Street bailouts. People were outraged about that, partly about the $700 billion figure, partly about the fact that Americans believe if you have a business and you do well, you keep the profits. If you don't do well, your business should fail. It shouldn't get bailed out by taxpayers. So that began to solidify things. People, when the bailouts were proposed, only 28% of Americans favored them. Looking back, only 25% think they were a good thing. After the bailouts, you then had the takeover of General Motors and Chrysler, which was opposed by an overwhelming majority of Americans. You had the extension of the bailouts to the insurance industry. You had the Cash for Clunkers program, which was opposed by a majority of Americans. Then you had the health care debate, which
Obamacare. Do you remember Nancy Pelosi running around with that big hammer, boasting about being the hammer and saying, I hammer in the morning, I hammer in the afternoon, I hammer all the time, and glowing about her arrogant way about her overuse of power? Didn't that sort of sour the American people and the whole Democrat Party?
It soured the people on everything to do with official Washington. The Democrats are the party in power right now, and people are very sour on them. When the Republicans were in power, people were sour on them. The voters this year, in many ways, are doing the same thing they did the last couple of cycles. They're voting against the team that's in power, and this is again where the frustration that bubbles up is very real. There's a lot of people entering the political process for the first time. They know that something is wrong. They don't know what to do about it. They want somebody to listen to them and respond. And quite frankly, the only thing they hear from Republicans and Democrats often is, well, as long as our side wins, it'll get better.
Yes.
And that's not the way people are looking at it.
I agree 100%. The two-party system is two-card Monte to most of them. Scott Rasmussen, your book is Mad as Hell. I recommend it highly. And I thank you very much for being the crystal ball gazer extraordinaire and joining us on the Savage Nation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Thank you. You see, now there's a man who studies this statistically. I do it intuitively, and so I come up with my prognostications in a different manner. But at the end of the day, his views and mine are very, very similar, truthfully. I personally think, however, that the social issues are the undercurrent underneath even the unemployment and the taxation. I believe the social issues, I believe the issues of security are far more important than statistics will show. I personally believe that the flood of immigrants is a major factor in why Fiorina, for example, in California, is not winning against Boxer. It's because the damn Republicans refuse to tackle the illegal immigration issue. They're almost identical. They mirror images of the Democrats because they're pandering to the large number of illegals. Consequently, people are saying, go to hell, I'm not going to vote for you anyway. Why would you vote for candidate R against candidate D when candidate R won't even address the number one issue in California, for example, and Illinois for that matter, and Texas for that matter, and many other states, which is the draining effect of illegal immigrants on our society, both socially and economically? If they won't even mention immigration, why the hell would you vote for them? So that's the real reason some of these Republicans are not moving ahead. Meg Whitman, big deal. She'd be better than Jerry Brown because he's an old line hack. We've seen Moonby before. She at least is a businesswoman. I believe she would win and probably be more favorable for businesses in the state. But on social issues, I give her a D. She's going to be exactly the same as Arnold Schwarzenegger. She's going to use the same idiotic polling methodology that Schwarzenegger used that destroyed his ability to lead. And so therefore, I say if we had a real candidate, a genuinely conservative candidate, someone who can articulate not only the economics, but the social issues, including abortion and the killing of the unborn, which, by the way, I'm going to tell you right now, you're not going to believe it. I have a 37-point program to save America in trickle-up poverty. I'm 2 weeks ahead of my book. I got the copy over the weekend, so you got to forgive me for this. I have a 37-point program to save America. In it is stop the abortion in this country the way it's practiced. And someone said to me when they saw it, why did you put that in the book? You know that that's going to kill the Republican Party. I said, hey, I'm not a Republican. I invented the independent in modern times. And there are millions of people who don't like the abortion mills. And they haven't forgotten that there are babies being killed like in a Holocaust. And that we have to limit this infanticide that's raging through society. So, I think that there are other issues other than straight dollar issues. I don't think the bottom line is the bottom line. I'll be right back.